how long do you recommend somebody use that methodology before they just start closing tickets?
I would say it's going to vary. And it's going to depend on how comfortable an individual feels. If you're putting closed and things are getting closed right away by someone else, that's usually a good sign that like you're making the same decisions that other people would make. But also, the thing I would say is that just because it's closed, it's necessarily going to be closed forever. Okay. Someone else can come along and disagree, and that's okay. And we will, discuss and figure out what that means.
Okay. Hello, everybody. It's Roger with Kinsta. I'm joined again by my friend Aaron for another Kinsta Talk. Hey, Aaron, how are you?
You're doing great. How are you, Roger?
Doing really well. I'm very excited about your bow tie. I'm very excited about today's episode because we're going to do a bug scrub live.
Yes.
For all the people at home. So as a quick introduction, can you just walk us through what we're going to experience here?
Yeah, so we are going to do what WordPress calls a bug scrub. And basically, we're going to be looking at a couple of tickets and trying to figure out, like, where are they at in the life cycle? Are they a good fit for WordPress? And, is there something we can do to try to help move them forward? Whether that be, leaving some comments or making some recommendations on, just ways to get it closer to being complete.
Very exciting. And I just want to let all the people at home understand that I am not a trained professional in any of this. I have no certifications or degrees. I don't even have a permission slip to say that I'm allowed to do this, but it's open source software, so we're allowed to do this. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. To clarify, as I'm doing all of this, we're going to look at the Trac system. And Aaron, can you just kind of walk us through, what we're looking at here and how somebody would approach this?
Yeah, so I picked this report because I think that this is a very approachable one, and that these are tickets that someone has at some point thought they have to do with the UI copy, so the text that a person that is using WordPress is seeing inside of the WordPress UI. And a lot of these are things where it's just like, can we make it a little bit easier for the users of WordPress to understand what is going on? And there's also, a good amount, but not a unconquerable amount of tickets awaiting review. And so these are ones that just haven't necessarily gotten as much love as they should. So we can see, and why don't we just open up that first one? The block styles dropdown should use default instead of not set.
Clicking on that, and now we're in, and we're looking at this. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in here.
Yep.
For the uninitiated, can we just kind of walk through? I see things like it was open 4 years ago, last modified 3 years ago. What are we looking at?
Yeah, let's talk through all of it. So the first thing you see on that top left is a number, and that is a unique ID for each ticket. In this case, 53785. And then we can see that it's new, which means that it's not something that's been reopened. The type of it is that it's a defect or bug. The opened and last modified just give a little sense of like, when is it from? And then the title. So the title of this one is Block Styles Dropdown should use default instead of not set. It was reported by a user, Bjorn W. The milestone is awaiting review, so we'll be seeing if it should stay there or maybe move around. Severity and priority are both normal, so it's not something that is, if someone has a thought is a giant problem. The component that this touches is the editor, and the focus is on the UI copy. And so we can see that, the person who reported this, see that if you register a new block style, the text used in the dropdown states not set instead of default, which is what's used as a caption in the image. So this could be confusing. So if we see that there's a attachment, if we scroll down a little bit,
right?
Just keep scrolling because the attachment's going to be in line there. We see that the styles say default, but then this says default style, not set versus experiment. So it's a little confusing. It's a little bit, it says default there. This is kind of doing something similar. All right. Like that seems like something like we should try to be consistent. That would help the end users. If we scroll down, we can see if there's any more conversation here. And so originally they thought it was accessibility related. It's not. So being that it was 4 years ago, one of the first things to do with a ticket like this is let's make sure that it still actually is an issue. And so if we open up WordPress and go to the editor.
1 second here. I'm going to share. I've got a playground opened up here.
Okay.
All right.
And if we, go to new posts.
Second. All right. Yes. Close out. All right.
All right, and let's add a paragraph block, and let's look at that sidebar. All right, so then let's open up the sidebar and see that this is one looks like the UI has changed, and so it's actually not a problem anymore. And so what we can do is we can go, if we take a screenshot of what the UI is now and go back to the ticket, and let's add that new screenshot up at the top under attach another file.
Attach another file. So does it helpful to put like, what are we at, 6.8? WordPress 6.8
so this
screenshot? Shot of the paragraph panel.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do we need to say, is that enough? Do we want to talk about, okay.
I think that's enough. And now if you click back on that ticket number, it'll take you back to the ticket, and we can add a comment and mark this one as resolved. Basically, leave a comment saying that the UI has changed so there's no longer two different places.
All right. Does that feel descriptive enough?
Yep. And then now we've got two options from here. So either you can mark this resolved and pick the resolution, or, for someone that's not necessarily a lot of experience on Trac, we might recommend you can add the workflow keyword of close, and someone else that's more experienced like myself will come back and close it out.
Okay, so I'm in the action section here. I'll click resolve as no. What am I?
So for less experienced people on here, I would recommend just leave it as new, and then under workflow keywords, there should be a drop down that's for close. Perfect.
Got it. Okay, and that's all we need to do here, and I'll hit add comment.
Uh-huh.
Wonderful.
Beautiful.
I love the subtle mention there for those less experienced, aka this guy. And I like that, right? Like don't take too big of a plunge, let people check your work. All right, fantastic. So we got through one there, and then we want to go, is there an easy way to get back to where we were, or just hit the back button a couple times? Yeah. All right, so with the focus on UI copy. All right, so now we'll see that one, I guess I need to refresh the page.
That one will now have moved away from the tickets awaiting review and is going to be in the candidates for closure section a little bit lower.
Fantastic. All right, so we'll click on the next one here.
Mm-hmm.
The title here is Email Me Whenever Anyone Posts a Comment Not Working. Interesting title.
Huh?
All right, we're waiting for it to load. Here we go. Okay, so this is 63504, new defect, 6 weeks old, normal severity, UI ad. So having enabled settings, discussion, email me whenever anyone posts is not delivering any emails. They've left a lot of environment details here.
Mm-hmm.
So quick question, in this case, since we're using Playground, does Playground have the capability to send out emails?
Playground does not have the capability to send out emails, but let's take a look at this ticket. I've actually looked at this one, and so I can say I think it might actually, and the fact that it has the UI copy, the issue is less that it's not sending emails and more that it's not necessarily the expected people getting emails. And so, if we read through it, there's, a reproduction report that talks about this to reproduce it.
So we've enabled settings, then they've disabled the settings for a comment is held for moderation. They create a post, they add a comment as another user, and then no email is delivered. So expected result is an email should be delivered every time someone posts a comment, and then with a note that with a comment is held for moderation enabled, moderation emails are correctly sent. All right.
Yep. All right, so let's scroll and read the comments of the ticket.
Okay. All right.
So we can see someone who's basically able to have the same experience. So if someone then took a look at the actual code, and it turns out that it's not notify the administrator or notify me whenever there's a comment. It's actually notify the post author.
Okay. All right. So then they've come back and they've said, it doesn't seem right. Thanks for the reference. I've been digging further. It's emailing the post author, not the comment author. Problem is that they feel it's ambiguous. Email me whenever anyone posts a comment. Let's see here. So in this issue, the issue is the copy seems to be confusing. And the last comment is to other types might include notifications within the administration area, though I imagine you could replace the pluggable email notification function with one that sends to Slack. I'll leave that for further review. Okay, so lots going on in here.
So what we can take a look at is what the setting looks like right now, and then there is a proposal for how the setting could appear. Right. So if you go back to your playground, perfect, yep. Go to settings discussion.
Right.
Scroll down, we see it's under the email me whenever. And I definitely read this as me meaning me, the person reading it.
Yes.
But it definitely turns out that that's not the way the code functions. And so we can look at some alternatives there. And one of the suggestions, if we go back to the ticket, yep. And you scroll up to the pull requests section,
yep.
Click on that. WordPress has a nice tool that if someone has a pull request, if you scroll down here, right there, test using WordPress Playground, at the very bottom of that, there's a link to test this pull request with WordPress Playground. And so now you'll be able to see, exactly what is being proposed as a fix for this.
Okay. Oh, this is very slick.
So it takes a moment to get it working in your browser.
And I appreciate everyone's patience with me working through this, but I hope that this gives the beginners out there the confidence to give this a try, and the more advanced people maybe less frustration with yourself.
But this playground tool, while not always the quickest, it is very, very handy for checking to see if something is going to work the way we expect it to.
Absolutely.
So we can see settings. So it looks like they changed it to say comment notifications.
Right.
Then now the options are notify the post author whenever anyone posts a comment, or notify administrators whenever a comment is held for moderation.
Okay.
What do you think of that? As someone that has, may not have necessarily looked at this settings screen recently, but has definitely been in a WordPress settings screen a few times, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I think that the descriptions next to the checkboxes feel much more thorough. Mm-hmm. My concern is getting rid of the mention of email. Is there any other type of notification besides the email that WordPress sends out at this time?
By default, no.
Okay.
Plugins can, but...
So my feedback would just be that it feels like changing what was email me whenever to comment notifications, possibly adding email in there somewhere would just help clarify things a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's really good feedback. Where, my first thought would be making it comment email notifications.
Yeah, that seems very straightforward and simple for sure.
Cool.
All right.
Go back to the ticket and add that feedback.
So I'll head back into here. All right. So at this point, it's just this looks good. One suggestion would be email to get what they've put in there. They had it comment notifications. All right. Excellent.
All right. Perfect.
And we'll just submit that. All right. So now back on the Trac ticket.
So the nice part about the way that Trac and GitHub interact is that comment should get synced back to WordPress. You might have to refresh that page, and it might take a moment, but...
Let's give it a shot here.
Yeah, it can take a moment for the two to sync up, but...
Gotcha. Should we look at another ticket and we can come back to this one?
We can take a look at one more. Sounds good.
So we'll click on the next one, handle Ajax failure when doing actions on themes and plugins. Okay. All right. So this is ticket 55368, handle Ajax failure when doing actions in themes and plugins. It's normal. So the description is when maintenance mode is active or the server is unresponsive for any reason, are there some UI issues in Ajax related messages like... So we've got a lot of different options in here. So we've got a bunch of screenshots. So there's a deleting, plugin enable auto update failure, delete failure, theme enable failure. So I'm guessing, my assumption is that there's a failure, but it's not saying there's a failure. It's just holding in this, the request could not be completed type messages.
Yeah, definitely looks like it's really just bad messaging when something unexpected happens.
Yep. And it looks like, so they had some fun going from, there was this is an older ticket, so 3 years ago. And it was marked as not being an issue because it wasn't necessarily explained as thoroughly. So they came back in. All right. So then I guess the solution here, or possible solution, would be that when you have a plugin delete failure, so it's holding in the message that it's giving when you're going to delete the plugin. And it just says deleting ... So if it's freezing in that, there's not really much we can do other than to change the copy where it's saying deleting, and maybe have, if this process feels hung up, either refresh the browser or look at restarting your server.
So I think what in comment 3, the reporter kind of describes some expected behavior that seems right to me, which is that, the error message be, just adding please retry or something similar. The big thing is, changing it back from that deleting state to the actionable delete. And so I think the big thing is for this needs a patch. And to help move this forward, assuming you agree with that kind of expected behavior of just the gentle please retry and making it actionable again.
Yes, I think that would be very helpful for users who are going through this. So then what's the step here? I'm obviously not going to make the patch.
Right, but what you can do is if in the workflow keywords, there is a workflow keyword for needs patch that we can add here, and we can add, just a simple comment that, the suggestion in comment 3 to add a gentle suggestion to please retry and make the buttons actionable again would move this forward.
Okay. Short and sweet. I've got it set as needs patch. Leave it as reopened and hit add comment. Wonderful. That seemed almost too easy to be of help.
Well, now this has a little bit better chance that someone's going to find this as one they want to work on. You have helped move 3 patches.
Wow. I need to take a break. I'm feeling pretty good about myself. Now, one thing that's interesting here, Aaron, and I want to circle back to our last discussion, is it feels like this is where abuse could happen. So for instance, let's say there's something that I personally am like, hey, this is important to me, and either I go in and I add a comment to refresh the ticket, or I ask a buddy or a couple of buddies to come in and leave comments. I'm assuming that is frowned upon activity. Can you explain why that's frowned upon and what is a better alternative for people to take in those situations?
Yeah, so I think that, one, leaving a comment with your experiences, especially if no one has left that comment, is going to be good. If it's not something that is repeating things that are said already on that ticket over and over again, that's where a lot of what I view as things that could border on abuse would happen.
Okay.
And so just looking and reading and really asking, is this something that hasn't been considered? Does this really move it forward, or is it just saying your piece for the sake of saying your piece?
And it's common sense, right? There's the golden rule: being polite, doing unto others as you do unto them. And I think this is just a really important aspect of open source software, and contributing and working in the open is just understanding that there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of people of varying capabilities. Maybe don't assume that you are the smartest person in the room is maybe a good first step there. Even if you are, and I'm sure yourself.
It's real easy for me not to assume I'm the smartest person in the room, because unless I'm alone, I'm probably not.
So that's great. I think that's really good advice. I really suggest people give this a try. I just wanted to circle back really quick and point out that the comment I had left in GitHub on the prior ticket has now updated into Trac. So that's pretty cool. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and just kind of recap, kind of what we've gone over here. And shown, hey, there's the Trac system. Go in, search and filter as you see fit. If you're not a developer, UI copy is a good place to go in. The Playground is an amazing tool that is just right there in the GitHub tickets when a patch has been added. So you can go and check and verify and adding your comment. I remember last summer was 6.6 and the auto rollback feature came out and I tested it. And as a non-developer, I'm not going to go look at the code. I'm not even going to pretend that I know what's going on there. But I did notice that the notification emails were missing some information. I think it was they didn't tell me what had passed. It only told me that something had failed. And I was like, hey, it'd be helpful if it told me, hey, these things worked so that I don't need to worry about that. And they put that in and so that was helping out. And, and I think what's exciting about this is, if you're not a developer and you want to help out, you can do it. But if you're a developer, there's so many more tickets you can probably jump into and dig into.
Yeah. I mean, there are plenty of places where designers can be, very helpful. There's an entire report needs design. There are, these UI copy ones. There are docs related ones. If you are, and I'd also say that just because you don't necessarily write code on a day-to-day basis, if you understand code, that can be, very valuable as well, especially with some of the documentation. If you're someone that you wouldn't necessarily consider yourself, you make themes, but you're not a developer, but maybe you do know enough that to read the code. Well, what is the plain English version of the reading the code that would help you in the future? Maybe that's something that can be added as documentation.
Excellent, great points. As someone working in the project as a core committer, where do you see the most help is needed currently in the project?
So, it's going to change on a regular basis. This week, it is testing 6.8.2, which is scheduled to come out on July 15th. And so testing that, there's a post on Make Core that talks about all of the changes that are happening in that. I think there are a total of 35 tickets that got closed for this. So that's one. We will be kicking off 6.9 soon. That's the expectation. And from there, kind of the 6.9 leads will kind of set what the, see as kind of their big overarching goals. And I'd also say that, having a pet ticket, one that you really just think should get in and, being a champion for it and bringing up just working on constantly trying to move it a little bit forward. Each of the ones that we looked at today, moving it forward meant something different. For one, moving forward meant, saying, I think that it's not a problem and can be closed. For another, it was, all right, well, there's a patch to test, and now there might be a little bit of iteration on that patch. This third one, it was, it needs a patch. And it's making sure that it has the right keywords. Each of those moves it forward just a little bit, but still is something moving it forward.
Okay. And I liked your recommendation on that first ticket that it's pretty much at closed, but since I'm new at this, I left it as unresolved and I added the tag of close so that'll flag a more experienced person to take a look at it. How long do you recommend somebody use that methodology before they just start closing tickets?
I would say it's going to vary, and it's going to depend on how comfortable an individual feels. And, once you kind of are if you're putting close and things are getting closed right away by someone else, that's usually a good sign that, you're making the same decisions that other people would make. And so it's a good, time. But also, the thing I would say is that just because it's closed, if you decide it, doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be closed forever. Okay. Someone else can come along and disagree, and that's okay. And we will, discuss and figure out what that means.
Would you say then that it's better to just err on the side of leaving it open, tagging it as closed, and when in doubt, and that's not necessarily putting a burden on yourself or one of the other developers?
It's absolutely no burden. I will add the close keyword in areas, especially if I'm I'm 70% sure that this should be closed. Let's see if someone else is going to disagree with me.
Okay. And I think that's really helpful to hear as an advanced, experienced user is still utilizing that methodology. So when in doubt, just use the tag. But I would encourage people to just start digging around Trac and just look at things. And if you feel like you've got something that you can contribute, then contribute it. If you don't, then move on. Find another ticket. It looks like there's plenty of tickets in there.
Oh, there's plenty there.
All right. Well, very exciting. Thank you so much, Aaron, for walking me through this. I feel like I now need to start spending more time working on some tickets. So I'm excited to try and help out as much as I can. As always, if somebody wants to get in touch with you or have
the
questions,
best way is to come to my WordPress website, which is at aaron.jorb.com.
Beautiful. Wonderful. All right, Aaron, thank you so much again for your time. I always appreciate it. I hope that the listeners got something out of this, at least got a chuckle at me not knowing how to navigate my keyboard after 30 plus years of doing this. So I hope you all get something out of that. Aaron, I look forward to speaking with you again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. Bye.